First Contact Initiative. The HSS Prometheus drifted silently through the void, its quantum engines humming at the edge of detectability. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling nebula ahead. The ship's adaptive hull shimmed slightly, adjusting its molecular structure to better absorb the increased radiation from the nearby stellar phenomenon. Another signature, Captain. Lieutenant James Rodriguez announced from his station, his augmented neural interface processing the sensor data faster than any conventional computer. Definitely artificial, but unlike anything in our database. The Prometheus had been tasked with mapping this unexplored sector of space, but what they'd found instead was far more intriguing. The alien vessels, 3 of them, moved with a grace that spoke of advanced technological capability, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Analysis. Shen's voice was calm, measured. 20 years of deep space exploration had taught her that first impressions were everything, especially when dealing with the unknown. Dr. Maya Patel, the ship's xenanthropologist, stepped forward, her holographic display filling the air with streams of data. Their technology appears to follow a strictly linear development path. Highly advanced, but predictable. No quantum fluctuations, no adaptive systems. They're powerful, but rigid. The Prometheus itself was anything but rigid. The ship was a testament to humanity's unconventional approach to technological development. Its hull wasn't just armor. It was a living membrane of programmable matter. Its computer systems weren't merely processing units, but a complex neural network that learned and evolved. Even its weapons systems, though hopefully unnecessary, represented a fusion of multiple scientific disciplines that most species would consider incompatible. "They're scanning us," Rodriguez reported, a slight smile playing across his face. "Very thorough, very conventional." Chen nodded, understanding the irony. The aliens were using standard scanning protocols, trying to categorize the Prometheus within their understanding of spacecraft design. They were about to be very confused. "Let them look," Chen said, settling into her command chair. "Dr. Patel, prepare first contact protocols. But let's show them something interesting first." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "Enable the quantum mirror defense system." The Prometheus's outer layer shifted, its programmable matter rearranging at the quantum level. To the alien scanners, the ship would appear to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, each configuration suggesting a different level of technological development. It was a defensive system designed to confuse potential threats, but it also served as an elegant demonstration of human ingenuity. On the alien vessels, which they would later learn belonged to the Velaran Empire, confusion reigned. Their sensors, designed to categorize and classify everything they encountered, were reporting impossibilities. The human ship seemed to exist in multiple technological states at once, its energy signatures shifting between primitive and advanced in ways that defied their understanding of physical law. "They're responding," Rodriguez announced. "Multiple communication attempts, different frequencies. They're adapting their approach." Chen smiled. The Velarans were already showing more flexibility than most species humanity had encountered. "Open a channel, full spectrum. Let's see how they handle our preferred method of communication." The Prometheus's communication system activated, but it didn't simply transmit signals. It created a complex web of quantum-entangled particles, establishing a communication network that existed outside normal spacetime. It was how humanity had solved the light-speed communication problem, by stepping around it entirely. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human spaceship Prometheus," she announced, her words carried not just by conventional signals, but by the quantum network. "We come seeking peaceful contact and the exchange of knowledge." The response from the Velaran ships was delayed, their systems struggling to process the quantum communication method. When it came, their surprise was evident even through the translation matrices. "Human vessel." A melodious voice responded, its owner clearly struggling to maintain composure. "This is Overseer Xylex of the Velaran Empire." Your methods of communication are unexpected, as is much about your vessel. We find unexpected things often lead to the most interesting discoveries, Chen replied, deliberately keeping her tone light. Perhaps we could demonstrate more of our unexpected qualities in a peaceful exchange. The Velaran ships adjusted their formation, moving into what their protocols likely designated as a diplomatic configuration. But Chen could see their weapon systems remained powered, their shields at full strength. They were intrigued, but cautious. Your ship, Xylex said, it defies our understanding. Our scanners suggest technological capabilities that should be mutually exclusive. This requires explanation. Chen exchanged glances with Dr. Patel, who nodded encouragingly. Overseer Xylex, humanity has found that the universe rarely respects our preconceptions of what should be exclusive. We've learned to embrace contradiction, to find strength in combining what others might consider incompatible. The Prometheus is just one example of this philosophy. To demonstrate, Chen gestured to her crew. The ship's quantum mirror system shifted again, but this time with purpose. Instead of creating confusion, it began displaying discrete technological systems, showing how human innovation had merged different scientific principles into something new. The Velarans watched in fascination as the Prometheus revealed layers of technology that challenged their fundamental understanding of scientific progress. Their own civilization had advanced through careful, methodical steps, each technology building logically on the last. The human ship represented a different path entirely, one of intuitive leaps, unconventional combinations, and solutions that seemed to ignore established limitations. Impossible, one of the Velaran scientists muttered over the channel, apparently forgetting protocol. Their power systems are simultaneously using fusion, quantum flux, and something we can't even categorize. Not impossible, Dr. Patel interjected gently. Just unexpected. Humanity has found that the most elegant solutions often lie in combining seemingly contradictory principles. Our ship doesn't just use multiple power sources, it creates synergies between them that enhance their collective efficiency. The next few hours were spent in a careful dance of revelation and response. The Prometheus demonstrated more of its capabilities, each display carefully calculated to challenge Velaran assumptions without appearing threatening. The human crew watched as their visitors struggled to categorize what they were seeing within their existing framework of understanding. Your species, Overseer Xylex finally said, is unlike any we have encountered. Our protocols, they do not adequately address this situation. Then perhaps, Chen suggested, it's time to write new protocols. Together. The response was silence, but Chen could almost feel the surge of activity aboard the Velaran vessels as they processed this suggestion. Their entire civilization was built on clear categories, defined protocols, and predictable progress. The Prometheus, and by extension humanity, represented something they couldn't easily classify, a species that seemed to ignore the normal rules of technological and social development. As the first day of contact drew to a close, Chen knew they had succeeded in their primary mission. The Velarans hadn't just encountered a new species, they'd encountered a new way of thinking about possibility itself. The real challenge and opportunity would come in what happened next. Prepare a full diplomatic package, she instructed Dr. Patel. But let's do it our way. Show them not just what we've achieved, but how we think. Let's give them something to really think about. The Prometheus's quantum communication system hummed to life once more, preparing to transmit not just information, but a new perspective on what was possible. The first contact had been made, but the real revolution in understanding was just beginning. The technological dance. The Velaran High Command's response to the Prometheus's presence came swifter than Captain Chen had anticipated. Within 12 hours, a fleet of 17 vessels had arrived, each one a masterpiece of crystalline engineering, their formations precise to the millimeter. It was an impressive show of force, carefully calculated to appear as both a demonstration of power and a diplomatic gesture. They're trying to understand us through their own lens, Dr. Patel observed, her holographic displays showing detailed analyses of the Velaran fleet's positioning. The formation is a perfect mathematical progression. Even their attempt at intimidation follows strict protocols. Chen nodded, a slight smile playing across her face. Then let's show them something they can't calculate. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Rodriguez, initiate the Mobius protocol. The Prometheus' response to the Velaran fleet's arrival defied their every expectation. Instead of assuming a defensive posture or retreating to a safe distance, the human vessel began to move in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Its hull rippled with quantum possibilities, each movement creating cascading patterns of cause and effect that the Velaran sensors couldn't properly track. On the lead Velaran vessel, High Commander Xerath watched in growing confusion as his fleet's sophisticated targeting systems failed to maintain a lock on the Prometheus. "Impossible," he muttered, his crystalline features refracting light in patterns that indicated deep distress. The human vessel is simultaneously occupying multiple probability states. The Prometheus wasn't just moving through space, it was dancing with possibility itself. Its quantum drive created micro-singularities that it surfed between, using gravitational forces as stepping stones. The ship's adaptive hull constantly reconfigured itself, each transformation presenting a different aspect of human technological achievement. "Their fleet formation is destabilizing," Rodriguez reported, his augmented senses tracking the minute shifts in the Velaran ship's positions. "They're trying to compensate for our movements, but their rigid protocols are working against them." Chen watched as the perfect mathematical harmony of the Velaran fleet began to break down. Their attempts to maintain formation while tracking the Prometheus forced them to violate their own carefully calculated positions. It was a subtle demonstration of how humanity's adaptive approach could disrupt even the most carefully planned strategies. "New energy signatures," Rodriguez announced. "They're activating their primary weapon systems." "No hostile response," Chen ordered calmly. "Let's show them something more interesting instead. Dr. Patel, initiate the symphony." The symphony was one of humanity's most elegant technological achievements, a harmonious fusion of quantum mechanics, electromagnetic theory, and principles that most species hadn't even discovered yet. The space around the Prometheus began to shimmer as multiple fields of energy interacted, creating patterns that were both beautiful and mathematically impossible. The Velaran fleet's sensors went into overdrive, trying to categorize and understand what they were seeing. The symphony wasn't just a display of power, it was a demonstration of how humanity had learned to weave together different forces of nature into something entirely new. "They're transmitting," Rodriguez reported. "Multiple channels, unprecedented bandwidth. I think we've got their attention." High Commander Xerath's voice carried a mixture of frustration and fascination when it came through the quantum communication network. "Your vessel's capabilities exceed our classification protocols. Explain your technological basis." "Commander," Chen responded, her voice carrying a warm note of amusement. "Trying to classify our technology within your existing frameworks would be like trying to understand a symphony by studying each note in isolation. We've learned that true innovation comes from the spaces between established principles, from finding new ways to combine what others consider separate and distinct." To demonstrate her point, Chen ordered another movement in their technological dance. The Prometheus initiated what looked like a standard faster-than-light jump, but instead of disappearing into hyperspace, the ship seemed to fold space around itself, creating a cascade of quantum echoes that allowed it to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The Velaran fleet's formation completely collapsed as their ships tried to track and respond to the Prometheus's quantum state multiplication. Their protocols, designed for conventional space combat and diplomatic encounters, simply couldn't account for a vessel that treated the laws of physics more like guidelines than rules. "Fascinating," Dr. Patel murmured, studying the Velarans' responses. "Their ships are actually attempting to adapt their protocols in real time. They're learning, even if it goes against their traditional methods." Chen recognized the significance of this development. The Velarans weren't just witnessing a demonstration of human technology, They were being forced to confront the limitations of their own rigid thinking. Every movement of the Prometheus challenged their assumptions about what was possible. "Their flagship is requesting direct communication," Rodriguez reported. "Private channel." Chen straightened in her command chair. This was the moment they'd been working toward, when demonstration gave way to dialogue. "Accept the channel," she ordered. "Let's hear what they've learned." High Commander Xerath's image appeared in the command center, his crystalline form shifting through colors that suggested deep intellectual turmoil. "Captain Chen," he began, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his voice. "Your demonstration has been enlightening. Our preliminary analysis suggests your species has achieved technological integration at a level we previously considered theoretically impossible." "Not impossible, Commander," Chen corrected gently. "Just unexpected. Humanity has found that the most significant breakthroughs often come from questioning our assumptions about what's possible." The Velaran commander was silent for a long moment, his form cycling through various crystalline configurations as he processed this statement. "Our council will need to be informed," he finally said. "Your species represents something unprecedented in our understanding of civilization development. This will require adjustments to our protocols." "Perhaps," Chen suggested, "that's exactly what both our species need, a chance to adjust our understanding of what's possible. The Prometheus and its capabilities are just one example of what can be achieved when we learn to think beyond established boundaries." As the conversation continued, the human crew could see the subtle shifts in the Velaran fleet's behavior. Their ships began to experiment with slightly less rigid formations, their scanning patterns became more creative, and their communication attempts showed signs of adaptation. It was a small change, but a significant one. The first crack in a civilization's long-held beliefs about how progress should occur. The technological dance had achieved its purpose. The Velarans hadn't just witnessed a demonstration of advanced technology. They'd been shown a fundamentally different way of thinking about innovation and progress. The real question now was how this revelation would ripple through their empire, and how it would shape the future relationship between their civilizations. Cultural shockwave. The Grand Assembly Chamber of the Velaran Empire thrummed with unusual energy, its crystalline architecture reflecting the agitated states of its occupants. The emergency session had been called within hours of High Commander Xerath's preliminary report about the human vessel, and now representatives from every major faction within the Empire sat in their traditional hierarchical arrangements, waiting for the presentation to begin. Supreme Archon Lyrics, her crystalline form a perfect representation of Velaran ideals of order and symmetry, presided over the assembly from her elevated position. "Begin the presentation," she commanded, her voice carrying both authority and a subtle undertone of concern. The chamber's central holographic array activated, displaying the first recordings of that HS Prometheus. The assembled representatives watched in growing disbelief as the human vessel demonstrated capabilities that challenged their fundamental understanding of technological progress. "Impossible," muttered Science Director Ven, his crystalline structure flickering with agitation. "Their technological development path violates every principle of ordered progress we've established over 10,000 years of civilization." Dr. Maya Patel's voice filled the chamber next, her recorded explanation of human innovation philosophy causing visible distress among the more conservative members of the assembly. The Velaran representatives watched as she calmly described how humanity had learned to combine seemingly contradictory principles, to find strength in adaptation rather than rigid adherence to established patterns. "They're not just using technology," observed cultural analyst Zira, her young crystalline form shifting through colors of excitement rather than dismay. "They're redefining what technology can be. Look at how their ship's systems interact. It's like watching evolution in real time." The recordings continued, showing the Prometheus's dance with the Velaran fleet. Each demonstration of human capability sent new ripples of discussion through the assembly. The ship's quantum state manipulations, its adaptive hull technology, its seemingly impossible propulsion methods, Each revelation challenged another foundational assumption of Velaran technological development. "This cannot be allowed to continue," declared Defense Minister Krax, his form pulsing with aggressive red energies. "Their very existence threatens the stability of our technological hierarchy. If word of their capabilities spreads through the Empire, it could destabilize centuries of carefully managed progress." But others in the assembly saw different implications in the human demonstration. Young engineers and scientists began speaking up, questioning the traditional insistence on linear technological development. The human approach suggested possibilities that had never been considered within the rigid Velaran framework. "Consider the implications," urged Research Director Ela, her voice carrying the weight of scientific authority. "Their adaptive technology alone suggests dozens of new research directions we've never explored. The potential benefits to our civilization." "Benefits?" interrupted Minister Krax. "Their chaos could infect our entire development protocol. Look at how their ship violated basic formation principles during the fleet encounter. They showed no respect for proper technological progression." Supreme Archon Lyrics raised her hand for silence, her crystalline form emanating calming frequencies. "We must consider all aspects of this situation carefully. High Commander Xerath, your direct observations of the humans are particularly relevant. Please share your insights." Xerath's holographic form materialized in the center of the chamber. "The humans," he began carefully, "do not view technology as we do. To them, our careful progression of development appears as unnecessary limitation. Their ship, the Prometheus, demonstrates principles we considered theoretically impossible, yet they achieved them by simply thinking differently." The assembly erupted in discussion again, but this time the conversation began to shift. Younger members especially showed increasing interest in the human approach to innovation. Reports began circulating of engineering students already attempting to replicate some of the basic principles demonstrated by the Prometheus. "They're inspiring our people to question fundamental principles," noted cultural analyst Zira, her tone suggesting this might not be entirely negative. "Look at these reports from our education centers. Students are already proposing new research directions, combining fields of study in ways we've never considered. The implications extended beyond technology." Sociologists reported increasing discussions about the nature of progress itself. If the humans could achieve such advances by thinking differently about technology, what other areas of Velaran society might benefit from less rigid approaches? "We're receiving requests from every major research institution in the Empire," reported Science Director Ven, his earlier skepticism now tinged with reluctant fascination. "They all want access to the human technological data. The academic community is excited." This revelation caused another stir in the assembly. Excitement was not a common emotion among Velaran academics, who typically valued measured progress and careful consideration above all else. The human influence was already beginning to shift cultural norms that had remained stable for generations. "Perhaps," suggested Supreme Archon Lyrics, her voice cutting through the debate, "we should consider that the humans offer us more than just technological challenges. Their approach to innovation, while disruptive to our traditional methods, may represent an opportunity for growth we hadn't anticipated." The assembly chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. The Supreme Archon was suggesting something revolutionary, that the Velaran Empire might have something to learn from this young, chaotic species. "The question before us," she continued, "is not whether to resist this new influence, but how to adapt to it while maintaining the core strengths of our civilization. The humans have shown us that progress can take unexpected paths. Perhaps it's time for us to explore some new paths of our own." The debate that followed would last for days, but the cultural transformation had already begun. Throughout the Empire, the rigid crystalline structures of Velaran society were experiencing their first tremors of real change in centuries. Young Velarans especially began to question traditional approaches, inspired by the human example to explore new possibilities. In her quarters aboard the Prometheus, Captain Chen received regular updates about the upheaval their presence was causing in Velaran society. "It's fascinating," Dr. Patil observed, reviewing the latest cultural analysis. Their entire civilization is built on principles of ordered progress, but our demonstration has introduced an element of creative chaos they can't simply ignore. Sometimes, Chen replied, watching the ongoing debates in the Valoran assembly through their quantum communication link. The most powerful technology we can share isn't technology at all. It's a new way of thinking about what's possible. The cultural shockwave continued to spread through the Valoran Empire, touching everything from engineering to art, from education to governance. It wasn't just about technology anymore. Humanity had inadvertently introduced a catalyst for change that would transform Valoran civilization in ways no one could have predicted. The ultimatum. The Valoran defense fleet assembled with mathematical precision, 100 ships arranged in a perfect geometric pattern around the diplomatic sector. Each vessel gleamed with crystalline perfection, their weapons charged and ready. But this display of military might wasn't aimed at an external threat. It was a response to the growing chaos within their own society. Defense Minister Crax stood aboard his flagship, the Eternal Order, his crystalline form pulsing with determined energy. The humans have been given enough time to destabilize our society, he announced to his assembled commanders. We must act now, before their influence spreads further. Meanwhile, aboard the Prometheus, Captain Chen watched the Valoran fleet's movements with careful attention. They're not just showing force, she observed, studying the tactical displays. They're making a statement about order versus chaos. The conservative faction is losing control of the narrative, Dr. Patil reported, her holographic displays showing spreading patterns of social change throughout the Valoran Empire. Educational institutions are implementing new research methodologies, engineering guilds are experimenting with adaptive technologies, even their artists are exploring asymmetrical forms. The quantum communication array suddenly pulsed with urgent energy. Supreme Archon Lyrix's image appeared in the command center, her usually perfect crystalline structure showing signs of stress. Captain Chen, I must warn you. Defense Minister Crax has convinced a significant portion of the High Council that your influence represents an existential threat to our civilization. Before Chen could respond, another transmission cut through their communication. Defense Minister Crax, broadcasting on all frequencies. Human vessel Prometheus, you have introduced dangerous elements of chaos into our ordered society. You will immediately cease all communication with our civilian population and submit to quarantine protocols, or face immediate military response. The ultimatum hung in space like a crystalline dagger. Chen looked at her crew, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes that she felt in her heart. Dr. Patil, what's your analysis? The Valoran society is at a tipping point, Patil responded, her fingers dancing through holographic data streams. Crax represents the old guard, desperately trying to maintain control. But the changes we've inspired, they're not just affecting their technology. Their entire social structure is beginning to evolve. They're scanning us, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his station. Multiple frequencies, much more sophisticated than their previous attempts. They've been learning. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Even in their attempt to suppress human influence, the Valorans were demonstrating how much they'd already changed. Their scans showed adaptation and innovation, concepts that would have been considered dangerous just days ago. Open a channel, Chen ordered. All frequencies, full spectrum. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Defense Minister Crax, your ultimatum demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. The changes in your society aren't being imposed by us. They are coming from within your own people. Lies. Crax's response was immediate, his crystalline form flashing with aggressive energies. Your chaos-inducing technologies and methodologies are corrupting centuries of carefully maintained order. You will submit to quarantine, or we will demonstrate the true power of properly developed military technology. The Valoran fleet began to move, their formation shifting into an attack pattern that would have been impressive against any conventional force. But the Prometheus was anything but conventional. Multiple targeting locks, Rodriguez reported calmly. They've adapted their weapons to account for our quantum state fluctuations. Like I said, they're learning. Good, Chen replied, surprising her crew. That's exactly what we wanted. She turned to address Krax's image directly. Minister, take a moment to consider how your fleet has already changed. Your targeting systems, your formation patterns, they've evolved beyond your traditional protocols. You're proving our point with every action you take. The Prometheus's hull began to shift, not into a defensive pattern, but into something entirely new. The ship's adaptive systems have been learning too, analyzing Velaran technology and culture, finding ways to bridge the gap between their different approaches to innovation. We're not here to destroy your order, Chen continued, her voice carrying conviction. We're here to show you that true order can embrace change, that progress doesn't have to follow a single path. Look at your own people. They're not rejecting their heritage. They're building upon it. Through the quantum communication network, images began to flow. Young Velaran scientists combining their crystalline technology with adaptive systems. Artists creating works that merged traditional symmetry with dynamic change. Engineers developing hybrid systems that respected their past while embracing new possibilities. You're afraid we're destroying your civilization, Chen said softly. But what we're really doing is helping it grow. Your people are ready for this step, Minister. The only question is whether you'll grow with them or try to hold them back. The tension in space reached its peak. The Velaran fleet held their position, weapons charged, while throughout their empire, millions watched the confrontation through their communication networks. It was more than a military standoff. It was a moment of decision for an entire civilization. Supreme Archon Lyrix's voice cut through the silence. Minister Krax, stand down your fleet. Her tone carried the weight of centuries of authority, but also something new, adaptability. The High Council has reached a decision. The humans have not brought chaos to our empire. They have shown us that our order can be dynamic, that our strength can grow through change. You would abandon all our traditions, Krax demanded, his form pulsing with desperate energy. Everything we've built. No, Lyrix replied firmly. We will build upon our traditions. We will take what we have created and make it stronger by learning to adapt. That is the true lesson the humans have brought us. Not chaos, but evolution. The stillness that followed was profound. Throughout the Velaran fleet, commanders and crews watched as their society balanced on the edge between rigid order and dynamic growth. The choice they made in this moment would reshape their civilization forever. Beyond understanding. In the aftermath of Supreme Archon Lyrix's declaration, the Velaran defense fleet hung motionless in space, their perfect formation now a symbol of both their past and their potential future. Defense Minister Krax's flagship, the Eternal Order, remained at the center of the formation, its crystalline structure reflecting the starlight in patterns that seemed less rigid, more dynamic than before. Their fleet's energy signatures are shifting, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his augmented senses detecting subtle changes in the Velaran vessels. They're adapting their systems in real time. Not just the weapons anymore, everything. Captain Chen watched as the Velaran ships began to move in new patterns, their traditional geometric formations flowing into more organic arrangements. It wasn't chaos. It was evolution happening before their eyes. Minister Krax, Supreme Archon Lyrix's voice carried across all channels. You have served our empire faithfully by maintaining our traditions. Now I ask you to serve it again by helping us grow beyond them. The silence that followed seemed to stretch across space itself. Then, slowly, the Eternal Order's crystalline structure began to pulse with new patterns. Complex, beautiful configurations that merged traditional Velaran symmetry with dynamic change. Perhaps, Krax's voice was subdued, but carried a note of dawning understanding. There is order in adaptation itself, a higher form of structure we hadn't considered. Dr. Patel's holographic displays erupted with data as she tracked the changes rippling through the Velaran fleet. Their ships are reorganizing at the molecular level, she reported with barely contained excitement. They're applying adaptive principles to their crystalline technology. It's beautiful. The Prometheus's quantum communications array received a new signal, a complex transmission that demonstrated just how quickly the Velerans could learn. Their traditionally rigid communication protocols had evolved into something that merged structure with flexibility, order with innovation. Captain Chen. Supreme Archon Lyrics appeared in the command center, her crystalline form now shifting through patterns that would have been considered heretical days ago. We would like to propose a new kind of alliance. Not one based on traditional diplomatic protocols, but something more adaptive. Chen smiled, recognizing the historic nature of this moment. What did you have in mind, Supreme Archon? Your ship, your technology, your very way of thinking has shown us possibilities we never imagined. Lyrics responded, but perhaps we have something to offer in return. Our understanding of structure, of pattern, of the fundamental order that underlies even chaos, combined with your adaptive approach, we could create something entirely new. The proposal was revolutionary. The Velerans weren't just accepting change. They were embracing it, seeking to merge their strengths with humanity's innovation. Throughout their empire, research centers were already beginning to explore new possibilities, combining crystalline technology with adaptive systems in ways neither civilization had imagined before. Look at this, Dr. Patel called out, her displays showing data from across the Veleran Empire. Their younger scientists are already developing hybrid technologies, crystalline structures that can adapt and evolve, while maintaining their fundamental integrity. They're not just copying our methods, they're creating something unique. Even Defense Minister Crax's fleet was transforming. The rigid military formations began to flow like liquid crystal, maintaining their defensive capability while gaining new levels of tactical flexibility. It was a physical demonstration of how tradition could evolve without being destroyed. We were wrong, Crax admitted, his voice carrying across the quantum network. We saw adaptation as a threat to order. Now we understand. True order must include the capacity for growth, for change. Our strength wasn't in our rigidity, but in our potential to evolve. The Prometheus's adaptive hull resonated with the crystalline frequencies of the Veleran ships, creating patterns of light and energy that symbolized the merging of their different approaches. It wasn't just a diplomatic achievement. It was the birth of something entirely new. Your people have shown remarkable adaptability, Chen observed to Lyrics. In just days, you've undergone changes that might have taken other civilizations generations to accept. Perhaps that is our true strength, Lyrics replied. Not the order we maintained for so long, but our capacity to recognize and embrace a better way when we encounter it. You haven't destroyed our civilization, Captain. You've helped us discover what it could become. Throughout the Empire, the transformation continued. Educational systems began teaching both structured and adaptive thinking. Engineering projects combined crystalline precision with quantum uncertainty. Art, music, and culture blossomed with new forms that celebrated both tradition and innovation. We're receiving requests from across their empire, Rodriguez reported. Research institutions, military academies, cultural centers, they all want to establish permanent communication channels. They're not just accepting change anymore, they're actively seeking it. The Prometheus had arrived expecting to make first contact with an alien civilization. Instead, they had become catalysts for a transformation that would reshape both societies. The Velerans had learned that order could embrace change, while humanity gained new appreciation for the power of structure and pattern. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Dr. Patil asked, watching as the combined fleet maneuvered through space, human and Veleran ships moving together in a dance that celebrated both precision and adaptability. Yes, Chen replied, her eyes on the future that was unfolding before them. We've both discovered something beyond our previous understanding, that the greatest achievements come not from choosing between order and chaos, structure and adaptation, tradition and innovation, but from finding ways to bring them together. As the Prometheus and the Veleran fleet moved through space together, Their combined technologies created patterns of light and energy that had never been seen before in the galaxy. It was more than a symbol. It was a promise of what could be achieved when different worlds, different ways of thinking, found the courage to evolve together. The story of humanity's first contact with the Velaran Empire would be told countless times across the galaxy, but it would always be remembered not as a tale of conflict between order and chaos, but as a testament to the power of civilizations willing to learn from each other, to grow beyond their limitations, and to discover new ways of understanding the universe and their place within it.